Hi Greg. There are three reasons why I think Scotland should be an independent country. Broadly, democracy, prosperity and fairness. Independence is the way to guarantee that people in Scotland always get the government that they vote for, no matter what happens at Westminster. In terms of prosperity, Scotland is an extremely wealthy country already. Probably everybody in the debate would kind of agree that it's perfectly viable and sustainable in its own right as a small European country compared to other countries. And then I think the third reason is fairness. So for those three reasons, I think Scottish independence is a good idea, and I'm sitting in front of a Labour MP with which I probably feel I have a lot more in common in terms of basic values, but we're obviously going to disagree about how we get there.
It's very interesting to hear the way, Pat, that you put the case, because what I reflect on when I listen to the way you put the case is the differing messages one gets from the campaign for independence. So you have Pat yourself making one case, and then I think of what the broader, I mean the mass of the Yes campaign, which is the SNP, the case they make, because I think of the fact that they're on record that they want to keep the pound, which would inevitably, as Professor Macron illuminated just in the last week, I mean that Scotland's room for manoeuvre in terms of fiscal policy, in terms of taxing and spending, would be extremely narrow, and it strikes me that that discordance between what you say and what Alex Salmond says is a really difficult issue for the Yes campaign. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's an interesting point. I mean, I've voted for all independence parties in the last years of the Scottish Parliament, but the SSP, the Greens and the SNP. I'd like to vote for Labour for independence, but they're not coming out for it. Let me talk to you about the currency thing, because again, I'm not going to speak as the dominant SNP position. I'm a member of no party, but I'm on the left. And I think that I sort of look at the currency union that's been proposed by the government at the moment as a bit like the stabilisers on a bike. I think at an end point in the future, I think Scotland should have its separate currency, like other small European nations that it could compare itself against. But I think in the short term, for both sides of the Tweed, both sides of the border, I think a currency union would help us get through the early years of Scotland separating from the UK.
And you're very honest in setting out, Pat. I think the problem is if you're a voter in Scotland, the SNP and Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon and so on, who are the dominant forces in the Yes campaign, they say they want Scotland to retain a currency union without any time limit. I mean, we only have to look at the European Union and the problem of having a monetary union without a fiscal union. I think that's a huge problem, that you talk about the grassroots, the SSP and the Greens and so on. Yes. Dennis Canavan saying one thing.
Who's chair of the
Yes campaign, yeah. Saying one thing.
Ex-Labour MP.
Yeah, saying one thing, and might be chair of the Yes campaign, but Sam and Sturgeon, the SNP are the heart of the Yes campaign, saying something else. So I think that's a huge problem not for you personally, but for the Yes campaign, because if you're a voter, you're thinking, well, what am I voting for here? Which policy is the one which will be followed?
I have to ask you, Greg, you must have some small, tiny corner of your heart that thinks, given the fair wind towards Labour values and left of centre values that there is in Scotland, how fantastic, how progressive, what a beacon you could set if you actually had a Scotland fully independent, realising its left of centre democratic will. It must excite you a wee bit.
What strikes me, Pat, leaving aside, I'll leave for the moment the argument about the difference between what you're arguing for and what the core of the Yes campaign's arguing for. And I think for the average voter in my constituency across Scotland, when I speak to them, they want to know what they're voting for. But let me take a broader point. What struck me...
Well, they're voting for democracy.
But you say democracy. I mean, in my view, one of the most important things that's happened in the last 100 years was the creation of the Scottish Parliament. And the whole point of Scottish Parliament, and it's worked very effectively, is to allow Scotland to retain the benefits of being inside the larger UK while having the ability to make their own decisions on a range of things we might have a different view on. Devolution has been a success, but devolution is a very different thing from leaving the UK.
There's a lot of people trying to inform people about the options in this. I think it's actually, in general, with the expansion of the franchise to 16 to 17-year-olds, I think in general it's a great, ennobling, empowering moment in Scottish life. All I would urge is for people to find out information, talk amongst themselves, and of course make their own decision.
Can I just say finally, Pat, the problem is words are not the same as information, and there's a lot of words coming from the Yes campaign, but actual facts about the various things that would be involved in that and leaving the UK.
Do you think there's a deficit of facts in this debate, Greg? You must be
hard to
kidding.
come by. I don't know. I think there's words, Pat, but words are not the same as facts.
Well, words can contain facts. Anyway, good discussion, I think.